This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, visit LibriVox.org. Read by Mark Nelson. The Gifts of Asti by Andre Norton. Even here, on the black terrace before the forgotten mountain retreat of Asti, it was possible to smell the dank stench of burning Memphir, to imagine that the dawn wind bore upward from the pillaged city the faint tortured cries of those whom the barbarians of Clem hunted to their prolonged death. Indeed, it was time to leave. Varta, last of the virgin maidens of Asti, shivered. The scaled and wattled creature who crouched beside her thigh turned his reptilian head so that golden eyes met the aquamarine ones set slantingly at a faintly provocative angle in her smooth ivory face. "We go?" She nodded in answer to that unvoiced question Lur had sent into her brain, and turned toward the dark cavern which was the mouth of Asti's last dwelling-place. Once, more than 1,000 years before, when the walls of Memphir were young, Asti had lived among men below. But in the richness and softness which was trading Memphir, empire of empires, Asti found no place. So he, and those who served him, had withdrawn to this mountain outcrop. And she, Varta, was the very last to bow knee at Asti's shrine and raise her voice in the dawn hymn. For Lur, as were all his race, was mute. Even the loot of Memphir would not sate the shaggy-headed warriors who had stormed her gates this day. The stairway to Asti's temple was plain enough to see, and there would be those to essay the steep climb, hoping to find a treasure which did not exist. For Asti was an austere god, delighting in plain walls and bare altars. His last priest had lain in the grave niches these 3 years, and there would be no one to hold that gate against intruders. Varta passed between tall, uncarved pillars, Lur padding beside her, his spine-mane erect, the talons on his forefeet clicking on the stone in steady rhythm. So they came to the innermost shrine of Asti, and there Varta made graceful obeisance to the great cowled and robed figure which sat enthroned, its hidden eyes focused upon its own outstretched hand. And above the flattened palm of that wide hand hung suspended in space the round orange-red sunball which was twin to the sun that lighted Urb. Around the miniature sun swung in their orbits the 4 worlds of the system, each obeying the laws of space, even as did the planets they represented. "Memphir has fallen." Varta's voice sounded rusty in her own ears. She had spoken so seldom during the last lonely months. "Evil has risen to overwhelm our world, even as it was prophesied in your revelations, O ruler of worlds and maker of destiny. Therefore, obeying the order given of old, I would depart from this, thy house. Suffer me now to fulfill the law." 3 times she prostrated her slim body on the stones at the foot of Asti's judgment chair. Then she arose, and with the confidence of a child in its father, she laid her hand palm upward upon the outstretched hand of Asti. Beneath her flesh the stone was not cold and hard, but seemed to have an inner heat, even as might be a human hand. For a long moment she stood so, and then she raised her hand slowly, carefully, as if within its slight hollow she cupped something precious. And as she drew her hand away from the grasp of Asti, the tiny sun and its planets followed, spinning now above her palm as they had above the statues. But out of the cowled figure some virtue had departed with the going of the miniature solar system. It was now but a carving of stone. And Varta did not look at it again as she passed behind its bulk to seek a certain place in the temple wall, known to her from much reading of the old records. Having found the stone she sought, she moved her hand in a certain pattern before it, so that the faint radiance streaming from the tiny sun gleamed on the greyness of the wall. There was a grating, as from metal long unused, and a block fell back, opening a narrow door to them. Before she stepped within, the priestess lifted her hand above her head, and when she withdrew it, the sun and planets remained to form a diadem just above the intricate braiding of her dull red hair. As she moved into the secret way, the 5 orbs swung with her, and in the darkness there the sun glowed richly, sending out a light to guide their feet. They were at the top of a stairway, and the hollow clang of the stone as it moved back into place behind them echoed through a gulf which seemed endless. But that too was as the chronicles had said, and Varta knew no fear. How long they journeyed down into the maw of the mountain, and beyond that into the womb of Urb itself, Varta never knew. But when feet were weary and she knew the bite of real hunger, they came into a passageway which ended in a room hollowed of solid rock. And there, preserved in the chest in which men born in the youth of Memphir had laid them, Varta found that which would keep her safe on the path she must take. She put aside the fine silks, the jeweled cincture which had been the badge of Asti's service, and drew on over her naked body a suit of scaled skin, gemmed and glistening in the rays of the small sun. There was a hood to cover the entire head, taloned gloves for the hands, webbed, clawed coverings for the feet, as if the skin of a giant, man-like lizard had been tanned and fashioned into this suit. And Varta suspected that that might be so. The world of Urb had not always been held by the human kind alone. There were supplies here, too, lying untouched in ageless containers within a lizard-skin pouch. Varta touched her tongue without fear to a powdered restorative, sharing it with Lur, whose own mailed skin would protect him through the dangers to come. She folded the regalia she had stripped off and laid it in the chest, smoothing it regretfully before she dropped the lid upon its shimmering color. Never again would Asti's servant wear the soft stuff of his livery. But she was resolute enough when she picked up the food pouch and strode forward, passing out of the robing chamber into a narrow way which was a natural fault in the rock unsmoothed by the tools of man. But when this rocky road ended upon the lip of a gorge, Varta hesitated, plucking at the throat-latch of her hood-like helmet. Through the unclouded crystal of its eye-holes she could see the sprouts of yellow vapor, which puffed from crannies in the rock wall down which she must climb. If the records of the temple spoke true, these curls of gas were death to all lunged creatures of the upper world. She could only trust that the cunning of the scaled hood would not fail her. The long talons fitted to the finger-tips of the gloves, the claws of the webbed foot-coverings, clamped fast to every hand and foothold. But the way down was long, and she caught a message of weariness from Lur before they reached the piled rocks at the foot of the cliff. The puffs of steamy gas had become a fog through which they groped their way slowly, following a trace of path along the base of the cliff. Time did not exist in the underworld of Urb. Varta did not know whether it was still today, or whether she had passed into tomorrow when they came to a crossroads. She felt Lur press against her, forcing her back against a rock. "There is a thing coming." His message was clear. And in a moment she, too, saw a dark hulk nosing through the vapor. It moved slowly, seeming to balance at each step, as if travel was a painful act. But it bore steadily to the meeting of the two paths. "It is no enemy." But she did not need that reassurance from Lur. Unearthly as the thing looked, it had no menace. With a last twist of its ungainly body, the creature squatted on a rock and clawed the clumsy covering it wore about its bone-thin shoulders and domed skull head. The visage it revealed was long and grey, with dark pits for eyes and a gaping, fang-studded, lipless mouth. "Who are you to dare to tread the forgotten ways and rouse from slumber the guardian of the chasms?"